Hey, happy Tuesday. I am so glad that you are here with us for our spiritual practices at home. So, today, what I wanted to talk about was confession. Oh, confession, there we go. Is confession. Confession is something that is incredibly important, but not necessarily something that we always think to do. I mean, even just saying confession in a religious context, in a church context, you're probably already imagining those booths that you can go in where a priest is on one side and a regular person is on the other, and they're divulging their kind of deep and dark secrets, their concerns, and that absolutely is a kind of confession, but not really the one that I mean today. Confession instead is an act of kind of throwing off your false self. It it's about looking at those things that are not real about you, that you put on, and relinquishing them, moving them, taking them away. It's an act of admitting that everything is not perfect, that everything isn't going perfectly well with you. Right now, so many of our social interactions are still really curated um, through screens. They're either a social media thing or a video platform thing, and I know when I do those things, you know, I position my camera very deliberately to give a particular angle of me and not a different angle of me. I think about the lighting. I imagine the things that are in the shot behind me when I write something on social media. It's not raw and unfiltered. It's exactly what I intend to put on display for people, which is to say that it's not transparent, not perfectly transparent anyway, and it can give the impression of a level of perfection that's not true. A curated look into my life is not a genuine and not a true look into everything that's going on around me. It's an act of taking a step away from something and taking a step toward something. Confession is saying that there's an aspect in my life, there's a behavior that I do, there's a part of me that I want to put down, that I want to walk away from, that is in some way hindering me. It's hurting me. It's not what I want. And by naming that, by saying that out loud, by confessing it, it's an act of putting that down and beginning to walk towards something else, something better. This passage we read in John. If we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, as the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. So that sounds kind of heady, and it sounds very kind of churchy, very religious. Um, because when we say, if we claim to be without sin, and maybe you get hung up on that. I said, listen, man, we weren't talking about sin. We were just talking about not being perfect. And that really is all sin is. It's just a declaration of I'm an imperfect person and you're an imperfect person. I mean, when is the last time you went out for dinner with a true, genuine, actual, perfect person? Like, when was the last time you had coffee with a bona fide, walking on earth, perfect human being who never said something that they wish they didn't say, who never thought something wish they didn't think, who never went somewhere that they wished they hadn't gone, who had never at any point in their life made a choice that turned out not to just be the wrong intellectual choice or the wrong factual choice, but was the wrong behavioral choice, that their choice injured somebody, themselves or somebody else, emotionally, physically, damaged a relationship. Because I've never done that. I've never had the opportunity to be out for dinner or out for coffee with a true, bona fide, perfect person. If we say that we have no sin in our lives, if we say that we have never at any point in our lives harmed somebody, intentionally or not, that at no point in my life that I have lied when I should have been honest and I could have been honest. At no point did I put myself first in a selfish act that bumped somebody down the line, that damaged a relationship, that I put a me first instead of a we first, that if I can look you in the face and say that, no, 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 not me. I mean, sure. I mean, I guess I'm technically not perfect, but, 99.9, I guess, some humility there. John is just saying, all you're doing is lying to yourself. That's all you're doing. You're just lying. You're attempting to deceive yourself because you know and I know and everyone knows we're not perfect. We're not even close. And maybe some of us, I guess, are technically closer than others, sort of. But in all fairness, it really just means that some of us are more, some of our struggles are more obvious than other people's. Some of the bad habits or the bad decisions that we've made have made more obvious issues. But in the grand scheme of things, if we try to claim that we're perfect, that we're without sin, all we're doing is deceiving ourselves. And that's why confession then becomes so important. Because when we confess, when we admit to fault, when we admit to mistake, when we admit to harming somebody else, we've opened ourselves up for the possibility of forgiveness, for healing, self-healing, healing the other person. We've opened ourselves up to the possibility of growth, where we're growing, where the people around us are growing. Doesn't mean we won't have consequences for whatever it is that we need to confess or admit. But it does mean we have the opportunity. So what do we do about it? I want you to consider trying some of these things out. You don't have to do all of them. They get more complicated as you work your way down the list. Confess in a journal, something that is for your eyes only. Sometimes the first step to true confession is to actually stop lying to yourself, is to admit to yourself, and at that moment, only yourself, that you do genuinely have a problem, a concern, that a behavior you're doing is something that you wish you weren't doing anymore. After that, perhaps you want to have an opportunity to pray, to really bring that concern, that confession to God. After that, maybe there is a person or a group of people that you want to talk to about it. And listen, again, I want to be absolutely crystal clear. I am not saying that you have to dredge up the worst thing you ever did and plunk it in front of strangers. You don't need to do that. You don't have to dredge up the worst thing that you have ever done and plunk it in front of your best friend. That's not the exercise. But you do need to sift your soul a little bit. Think about what's going on. What perception are you giving off that is perhaps part of a false identity? What are you hiding from other people because you desperately don't want them to know? That's something you may need to confess. It doesn't have to be sinful in the way that we think of sinful, as in you doing a bad thing. For example, I have discovered over the last couple of weeks, I am much more anxious than I realized about transitioning from lockdown to not lockdown. Much more anxious. And that in our province, in Nova Scotia, as we've been giving some more freedoms, I'm having anxious reactions to things that I'd never had anxious reactions to before. And as confident as I like to project myself to be, and as relaxed as I generally like to present myself to be, I have been really anxious lately. Like really anxious. And I am hiding that from most people because I don't want it to be part of my persona, because it's not the person I want displayed on screens or on videos or on recordings. I'm hiding it. And I guess you can count that as a step 3 for me. It doesn't have to be a massive life-altering change. Just something that you know that you've been hiding, that perhaps you wish you weren't hiding. An opportunity to confess something of your false self, something that you have in your persona that maybe isn't quite real. Consider one of these steps. That's it. That's all for me today. I would love to have you consider these things. We're going to talk about confession again on Thursday. I will look forward to connecting with you then. Otherwise, God bless and stay safe.